back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and are we as Marvel fans allowed to call ourselves victims of what happened to Phase 4? I mean, I've not been a Marvel fan movie-wise for quite some time, but all the individuals that still are just absolutely upset about the direction Phase 4 took, and understandably so. So I think it's fine to call ourselves victims, right? And if so, isn't victim blaming a bad thing? Isn't victim blaming one of those things that you are never supposed to do? Well, I think that Screen Rant is about to become a victim blamer here. The real problem with MCU Phase 4 was us. That's right, throw the fans under the bus. Tell them that they are the problem. Not, the writing, the directing, the general nonsense that people put up with, but you victims, it's your fault. I guess it's what we were wearing. Let's go through this and find out what's going on with this article. The Marvel Cinematic Universe's fourth phase received some pushback from fans. Were the criticisms warranted, or did expectations get too high? Well, let's find out. But, this is coming from Screen Rant, who is known for some of the most abysmal takes in the movie industry and online in general, right up there with BuzzFeed and Polygon. Let's see. The MCU's Phase 4 has been the subject of plenty of criticism over the last several years, but not all the complaints surrounding this era of the franchise are warranted. In fact, looking at the MCU's fourth phase in hindsight may reveal that some harsh takes on the films and series therein weren't always accurate. Oh, goody! How hard are you going to shill for Papa Disney now? That's right, give the House of Mauschwitz their dues, because, frankly, you can't stand to lose your access, is what it just sounds like to me. I pretty much bet all the criticisms were warranted. Let's go on. As the long-running superhero franchise gears up for the inception of Phase 5 with next year's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, that's strange. It says next year. This was published a day ago. Maybe they mean next month? Does it come out next month? I don't even know. That's how much I've fallen off of the MCU stuff. I think it's next month. It may require a resetting of expectations to keep up the latest Marvel films. The fourth phase of the MCU inherited a difficult challenge in picking up the pieces of the well-received Infinity Saga. No, there were no pieces to pick up. It's its own new saga. You don't watch Dragon Ball Z, represent, and say that, oh man, the Android and Cell saga, they really had to pick up the pieces of the Frieza saga. No, it's just the next entry. There's no pieces to pick up, which have been widely regarded as a golden age for superhero movies, while Phase 4 attempted to improve on the finale of Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame. Improve on it? Look, if they were considered so good, why would you need to improve on them? Already, this article is just baffling. Its projects were often belittled in comparison to prior films in the franchise. The constant pushback and negative reception to the response to Phase 4 have led some to consider it the worst phase so far in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with some even go so far as to claim that Marvel has lost its magic touch. Well, look, I was claiming Marvel lost its magic touch somewhere in Phase 3, maybe even as early as late Phase 2, with just some okay movies here and there that were required reading for the big finale. And honestly, objectively, Endgame's not even that good of a movie. I'll say Infinity War is. I'm kind of marveled out, so I won't really go back and rewatch it, but I'll acknowledge Infinity War is a pretty good movie. Endgame really isn't. I mean, it felt so at the time. It was a big spectacle, but when you just look at the objectively true things that what makes a movie a good movie on its own merits, Endgame isn't anything special. Why MCU Phase 4 was so divisive. Phase 4 has proven to be quite divisive for several distinct reasons, contributing to the notion that the MCU has dipped in quality or lost its direction. Well, I mean, look at the CGI here and the advertisement here. I mean, people are of course going to be like, oh, it's because the straight white guys hate women, superheroes, and people of color. No, it's just, objectively, this is just poor quality stuff. Unfortunately, some of this criticism was objectively unjustified when it took the form of problems with the franchise's expanding representation. So predictable. Did I call it, or did I call it? I mean, this must be your mom's phone number, because I called it. With female-led projects like She-Hulk and Ms. Marvel being review-bombed mere seconds after their premiere. Dude, they weren't review-bombed. The girl behind She-Hulk has said she doesn't want to do Marvel stuff anymore. It just wasn't a good show. Guys, just because something's not good doesn't mean it's being review-bombed, okay? I already made the short that you can check out about The Last of Us, the TV show. It was getting review-bombed, but positively. Hours before the first episode dropped, it somehow had 200 positive reviews, putting it at a perfect 100%. How is that not review bombing? Give me some actual proof of review bombing. Don't just claim it to save face. What a shill article. While review bombers may be a vocal minority, well, if you're calling them a minority, then they can't bomb a series. If they're a minority, that means they are a small group. They can't bomb an entire franchise if they're a small group. So you're either lying or just using the word minority wrong. But considering how articles like this fixate so much on minorities, I don't think they're using the word wrong. They get it right every other time. Their allowed backlash to increasingly diverse titles can't be denied as a major contributing factor to Phase 4's divisive nature, which will undoubtedly continue as Phase 5 and 6 double down on Marvel's efforts to increase representation in its titles. No one has an issue with representation. Black Panther made a gajillion dollars. We care about good writing and when it doesn't feel like forced agenda-driven bogus. She-Hulk had the infamous scene.
Here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time. When I'm catcalled in the street, when incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it pretty much every day because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult or I might just literally get murdered. So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you.
And that's just not good writing. It's been said a million times. Bruce Banner literally had a scene talking about putting a gun in his mouth because his depression about what he has become is so severe. Oh, but she's upset about being catcalled. I'm not going to go over the things that many people far more talented and respected than me have gone over, but let's acknowledge that it's not about diversity and not about, women and people of color in the movies and, straight white guys don't like that. They just are low-quality storytelling because you're putting that stuff at the forefront. There's a reason Black Panther made a gajillion dollars, and it wasn't the diversity. Other Phase 4 complaints take a far less toxic approach to the critique of the current era of the MCU. A common point of contention has been the seeming lack of direction therein, as many recent titles don't seem to tie into the overarching story, leaving it unclear how major characters like Doctor Strange fit into the multiverse saga as a whole. The increased number of Marvel titles each year contributed to this issue, while the wider range of stories being told not always coinciding with the ongoing theme of the multiverse itself. This could lead to disenfranchisement and belief that Phase 4's story is moving too slowly. It's not that it's moving too slowly. The Infinity Saga took 3 phases with like 30 movies or something like that. No one cares about a slow-moving story if the slow move is well-paced. But this is just lazy paint-by-numbers crap with bad writing. Does anyone remember The Eternals? The Eternals was part of Phase 4. I'm pretty sure it was the second movie in Phase 4 after Spider-Man Far From Home. But no one remembers because it just wasn't a good movie. Is Phase 4 really the MCU's worst phase? Yes, objectively speaking. It absolutely is. But then again, in my opinion, Marvel has been falling off since late Phase 2. So, whatever. I'm done with cape shit. While there is no denying that Phase 4 is the most divisive in the MCU, claiming that it's the worst phase yet is painting with far too broad a brush. Well, what would you rather us say? There's been 4 phases. One of them has to be the worst. So if you're going to say Phase 1, 2, or 3 was the worst, explain why. Because if none of those 3 were the worst, well then this one is just by default. Despite many claims that Marvel projects have dipped in quality, the actual statistics for critical approval don't completely agree. Okay, well, critic approval is not what most of us care about, because the critics are going to give glowing reviews to anyone that gives them access, like what you do, Screen Rant. People are just going to fawn over these films and suck them off because Papa Disney, the House of Auschwitz, pays them to do so. Or at least if they don't, give us some proof they don't, because there's a reason that the vast majority of audience scores are notably lower than in the previous MCU movies. I care about the audience scores, not the critics' scores, because there's no way of knowing that the critics aren't paid shills. Do you know who aren't paid shills? The audience, the actual people going and paying to see these films, or in this instance, not going and paying to see them. Are you telling me that Thor 4 being maligned is not indicative of a larger problem with the MCU? Though the Rotten Tomatoes score for Thor Love and Thunder, oh, well, hey, look at that. We're just going to keep on rolling with this, me calling this stuff before it comes out. And certain other recent projects are lower than many other MCU titles. The average Rotten Tomatoes score for Phase 4's movies and series is an impressive 84%. It's not really impressive when everything gets good critic reviews at this point. Willow has a positive critic review, and that show is garbage. Superseding the averages for both phases of 1 and 2, only Phase 3's average stands slightly higher, with an impressive 89% average rating. The audience ratings, however, are a different story, like I said. with many of Marvel's lowest scores coming from Phase 4, though these numbers are too tenuous considering the destructive nature of review bombing. Oh, when will you let this go? Acknowledge that people just don't like this tripe anymore. It's just not good. It's okay for things to not be good. You learn from it, you move on. It is that simple. Want to know what was amazing? True Detective Season 1. You want to know what was fine, kinda good? True Detective Season 2. You want to know what was amazing again? True Detective Season 3, because they learned from their mistakes and didn't repeat the mistakes of True Detective Season 2 and got back on track. You can't claim that True Detective Season 2 was review bombed. It just wasn't as good. The quality wasn't quite there. The writing wasn't quite there. It's that simple. That's what's happening to Phase 4 of the MCU, or what has happened to Phase 4 of the MCU, but you're too busy trying to stuff your pockets with Disney dollars that you want to make articles like this that, again, victim blame the moviegoers, the fans, the people that keep the industry afloat, which has made it nearly impossible to ascertain accurate fan approval for titles like She-Hulk or Ms. Marvel. What really went wrong with Marvel's Phase 4 in this regard wasn't the quality of the projects, but rather their wide range of storytelling in different genres, which was destined to appeal to more niche groups. Okay, but that's not good. When you have a product, usually for that product to be as successful as possible, you want it to be as accessible as possible. Things that are built for niche groups are fine. I have no issue with things that are built for niche groups. There's a niche for just about everything. But you're not going to make near as much money. So if Marvel's making less money, but they're happy with making less money because these niche groups are appeased, that's fine. But if they want to see a big return on investment and see more money, then they can't be making things so niche. It's kind of that simple. You choose one side or the other. Super niche with dedicated fans, less money, but very positive reviews, or more broad with more money, but you're going to have far more middling reviews because, well, you're trying to please everyone, which you can't do. Also, I would like to see your proof of these claims. See the proof that, it wasn't the quality of the products, but rather the wide range of storytelling. That's just a statement. I'm making statements here as well. I'm making anecdotal statements and statements that, frankly, I don't have stats to back up. I can only show you droves and droves of Twitter comments talking about how awful they are. You can show me droves and droves of Twitter comments talking about how great they are. So who's right and who's wrong? Give me some actual statistics to back it up that can be trusted. Because you give me critic scores, I give you audience scores. I think inherently audience scores are easily the most trusted, should be taken the most trusted, because, well, the audience gets to decide whether something was good or bad. They're the ones that paid to see it. But maybe you have a different outlook, and if so, explain it. Don't just make baseless statements and expect us to accept it as gospel. Phase 4 also included projects like Spider-Man No Way Home, Loki, and Werewolf by Night, which are hailed as some of the Marvel's greatest projects of all time. Spider-Man No Way Home was mid at best. The only reason everyone loves it so much is because of the other Spider-Man coming back at the end. However, the entire film as a whole, dude, it's not that great. It's a 60% at best, and I'm being real generous. Loki, I didn't watch. I was done with Cape stuff at that point. Werewolf by Night, same. I'm not going to claim they're bad. I just don't care anymore. Criticism regarding Phase 4's seeming lack of direction must also be held in comparison to previous phases. As the first entry in the multiverse saga, Phase 4 is most comparable to Phase 1 of the MCU, the franchise's foundation. And guess what? From the jump, Phase 1 set up that this was going to be a larger story. You had Iron Man. You can see Captain America's shield being made, in the background. You have Nick Fury. Iron Man 2 comes along. We get introduced to Black Widow crossing over into, the Iron Man story. There's groundwork being laid. By the time of the first Avengers film, which is only the 5th, I believe, film in the franchise, you have a post-credit scene with Thanos. We now know there's a large, looming, overarching threat. Even though Loki was a big bad, there's something worse out there. In Thor, we had the introduction of Hawkeye, albeit in one scene, but he's still there. Roots were planted. Groundwork was laid. Phase 4 didn't do that. It was a disjointed mess of storytelling. So you can't compare it to Phase 1, or if you do, you have to acknowledge, from a storytelling perspective, is far worse than Phase 1. Phase 4 did not have the crossover finale that Phase 1 had, but has done more for its respective saga in less time. After 2 years, Phase 4 has already introduced the Multiverse Saga's main villain. Really? I know you're going to say it's Kang. Yeah, they introduced Kang, but they didn't do it in a meaningful way. Really, in a one-off TV show about a particular niche character? That's how you're going to do it? Something our heroes know nothing about? Like, I guess technically the heroes didn't know anything about Thanos either. Only Loki did. So now Loki once again only knows about the next the next big bad being Kang. Okay, so you're recycling your ideas? That seems kind of lazy. Set up Avengers Secret Wars and introduced heroes to join the battle ahead. The perception that Phase 4 is directionless merely stems from the increased number of projects, not the pace of its storytelling. Whoa, those are intrinsically tied to one another. If you have a bunch more projects, your pacing is going to suffer if you don't manage it properly, which they haven't. The pacing for Phase 4, what little of it I've cared enough to watch, has been egregious. How fan expectations shaped MCU Phase 4's reception. The biggest problem with Phase 4 hasn't been its quality or lack of interconnectivity, absolutely it has, but go on, but rather the incredibly lofty expectations that plague each project. For example, WandaVision, one of the MCU's best Disney Plus series, was overshadowed by running rumors that the show would reintroduce Quicksilver, set up the X-Men, and feature a cameo from the villainous Mephisto. Okay, there are rumors, but you know what? Screen Rant, you put out articles like this. You put out speculative articles. You put out articles with rumors. You're just as much to blame as the fans. I can't believe you were so on such a high horse looking down at us plebeians like you are the cause of all of this, when so many individuals get their information from you or outlets like you, like Polygon, like Gizmodo, any sort of like geek culture clickbait websites that people see when they're scrolling through Twitter. You're the cause of it, and you want to blame us. You have got some balls, Screen Rant. Similarly, plot predictions for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness were more akin to that of Secret Wars, making the actual movie feel smaller and less satisfying in comparison. Well, when you got a movie called Multiverse of Madness, and you spend almost all your time in one universe, with glimpses of others here and there, it just doesn't live up to its name. Also, it wasn't good. It was not a good movie, and it sucks to say that. Sam Raimi is my favorite director of all time. And this just was a bad Sam Raimi movie. It wasn't a Sam Raimi movie. It had glimpses of Sam Raimi in it, but really it was a Disney project that shackled Sam Raimi. Because Multiverse of Madness could have been great. It was one of the few things I was looking forward to, and that is actually the film that put the nail in the coffin for me when it comes to Phase 4, when it comes to cape shit as a whole. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness killed the MCU for me. Killed superhero stuff in general for me. You want to know the only reason I'm going to go see Deadpool 3? It's because Hugh Jackman's my favorite actor. Not even because it's Deadpool, not even because it's Ryan Reynolds, not because of Wolverine. I love Hugh Jackman. Dude can sing, dude can dance, he's charming, he can do everything. And because of that, I love the dude and want to support projects he's in. I will go see even the most mundane and floppiest of his films because I love seeing Hugh Jackman do his thing. But if it weren't for him, I don't even think I'd see Deadpool 3, and that's not MCU related. Time and time again, rumors led to disappointment when building blocks in the multiverse saga didn't carry the same weight as Avengers-level movies. Look, you've run out of stakes. Marvel, Spider-Man Far From Home, it introduced the multiverse. And then Doctor Strange, multiverse. Then Loki, multiverse. Like, yeah, you have so many multiverses, and every time the threat is, oh man, the multiverse, we could destroy the multiverse and all universes. There's no stakes when that is the plot every time. That was the plot of Loki. That was the plot of Multiverse of Madness. That was the plot of Spider-Man No Way Home. That's going to be the upcoming plot of Quantumania. We just don't care. Give us some small-scale stories about characters that we care about, that are well written. I genuinely feel like that's what Ms. Marvel tried to do and wanted to do, but it did it in the most boring, pedantic, pedestrian way. Moreover, Phase 4 can often feel slower as it follows the non-stop thrills of Phase 3, which was the climactic act in the 3-act story structure of the Infinity Saga. Phase 4 can't be compared to Phase 3's pace because each was designed for a completely different purpose to fit the MCU's larger narrative. While Phase 3 was meant to bring the Infinity Saga story to a climactic end, Phase 4's job is merely to lay the groundwork for the brand new multiverse saga and introduce the major players therein, a job which it has undeniably accomplished. No, I will say the opposite. It has not accomplished it because I don't know who the major players are due to the story structure. Are the Eternals supposed to be major players? What are they going to do in the multiverse saga? Nothing that I know of, because from the story beats that we've seen, nothing that incentivizes them being in the movie or being in the saga. What point was there to putting the Eternals in the multiverse saga? If you had done your storytelling correctly, there would be some breadcrumbs to let us know. What about She-Hulk? What has She-Hulk given us about the multiverse saga? I'm not saying every show need to be about multiverses, but there's nothing that's laid the groundwork in those shows or movies for it. Yeah, we find out at the end that Thor has a son. Okay, what's that got to do with the multiverse? Maybe it has to do something, but you didn't give us any inkling to believe that, especially for fans that read the comics that know that his son is not multiversal in any way. His son was from his time on Sakaar. So that's... point is, no, they've absolutely failed. They did not undeniably accomplish it. They failed at it. Phase 4 of the MCU certainly hasn't been without its issues, much like any other of the phases that came before it. Certain films have struggled under the weight of the franchise, and the series has visibly experienced growing pains as movies find their place in the larger cinematic universe. Growing pains? Dude, visual effects peoples are refusing to work for Disney/Marvel at this point. They are so cheap, so paint by numbers, and Marvel isn't paying them very well. They're paying them pennies on the dollar to shovel out these assembly line CGI action scenes. They can't even get good, well-trained, invested special effects people. They're getting bottom-of-the-barrel grad students because no self-respecting visual effects industry worker actually wants to work with Marvel. There was literally an article a few days ago that came out saying that. So it's not just about the writing. It's literally about the entire process. This, as Epic Rap Battles of History called it when talking about Disney, assembly line whimsy. That's what we're getting. These just sad-looking assembly line products that are a shadow of the former selves of what we got in Phase 1 through 3. Go rewatch Avengers, the very first. Go rewatch it. I used to hate the Avengers. When it came out, I thought it was completely overrated, did not like the film. I rewatched it last year. The first time I've actually enjoyed the first Avengers movie. You want to know what made me really appreciate it? Practical sets. I didn't appreciate the practical sets the first time I watched it in 2012 when it came out because, honestly, we hadn't gotten the crap we got at this point, so I just thought it was, whatever. It was a big spectacle movie. Now I appreciate the first one because I can look and be like, oh, dude, they're not on a green screen. Wow. You can't do that with even the most basic of the Disney Plus shows. It's sad. However, Phase 4 has accomplished its job of setting up the timeline of the MCU's multiverse saga, promising exciting things to come. As Phase 5 and 6 complete the multiverse saga leading up to the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, it will soon become clear just how crucial a role the MCU Phase 4 played by establishing the next era of the MCU. Look, no one cares. We're done. I mean, yeah, people are probably going to come out and see the MCU movies because at this point it's kind of been ingrained in us. It's just by design. But tell me, are you going to go see the next MCU movie? Or would you rather watch Birdman? I think he would rather watch Birdman. Look, the point is, the MCU just isn't very good anymore. And maybe they can get things back on track, but I'm going to let someone else figure it out if they can, because I'm done. When you burn your goodwill with customers, eventually they'll stop coming back. And that's what's happened with me. As somebody who's seen almost every single MCU film in theaters up to Endgame, I think the only one I missed in theaters was Iron Man 3. I think that might be the only MCU film I didn't see in theaters, was Iron Man 3. And as someone who has pretty odd taste in MCU films, my two favorite solo films in the entire MCU are the first Thor and the first Ant-Man. So, I've got some pretty off-the-wall opinions when it comes to the MCU. I get it. But at this point, I'm done. My opinion is I'm over cape shit, and hopefully you guys are as well. If the MCU can get its mojo back, and I truly hope it doesn't, it'll be doing so without me and without a lot of individuals like me who are moving on to, hopefully, a return of real cinema. But that's all I've got for this one. Maybe you can give me your opinions in the comments below, or you can let me know on Twitter at BoltTheWord. Also, please like and subscribe. The subscription would mean the world to me as I cover nerdy news multiple times a day. Just like today when I covered Gwen Stefani and culturally appropriating Japan, or did she, and more interesting information about Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, and Johnny Depp's lawyer. So check out those videos as well as anything else in the nerdosphere you think you might be interested that I've covered. Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, you name it, but subscribe because this has been Words of Paradise.